Millionaire woman marries her maid's son, then discovers he owns a fortune and secret. Sophia Hartwell had inherited more than just wealth from her family's pharmaceutical empire. She had also inherited their absolute certainty about the natural order of society. At 31, she commanded a fortune worth $400 million from her Manhattan penthouse, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered views that reminded her daily of her position above the city's masses. For 18 years, Elena Rodriguez had maintained Sophia's pristine world with invisible efficiency. She arrived each morning at 7, transformed chaos into order, and departed each evening having erased every trace of her presence, except the immaculate perfection she left behind. Elena was more than an employee to Sophia. She was a constant, reliable presence in a life marked by the unpredictability of business ventures and social obligations. Elena's son, Diego, had been a background figure in Sophia's consciousness for over a decade. She remembered him as a shy teenager who occasionally accompanied his mother to work during school holidays, quietly reading in the service quarters while Elena completed her duties. As he grew older, Diego's visits became less frequent, coinciding with Elena's proud reports about his academic achievements and scholarship opportunities. Diego Rodriguez emerged into Sophia's active awareness during a charity gala for children's literacy programs. At 28, he had transformed from the awkward teenager she remembered into a man whose presence commanded attention, despite his obvious discomfort with the opulent surroundings. He wore a simple black suit that looked expensive but understated, and he moved through the crowd with the careful grace of someone unaccustomed to such social environments. Elena had invited Diego to accompany her to the event as her guest, a privilege Sophia extended to longtime employees for major fundraising occasions. But what caught Sophia's attention wasn't Diego's unexpected sophistication, it was his complete indifference to her status and wealth. When she approached him during the cocktail reception, expecting the deference that her position typically commanded, Diego greeted her with polite respect rather than the subtle positioning that characterized most people's interactions with her. Their conversation revealed surprising depths to the young man Sophia had dismissed as simply Elena's son. Diego spoke passionately about his work with literacy programs in underserved communities, demonstrating both intellectual sophistication and genuine commitment to social justice. He had spent 2 years teaching in rural schools through Teach for America, followed by graduate study in education policy at Columbia University, where he had completed his master's degree on full scholarship. What impressed Sophia most was Diego's authentic humility about his achievements. He spoke about his academic success as the result of opportunities provided by others rather than personal brilliance, and he credited his mother's work ethic and sacrifices for making his education possible. His respect for Elena was obvious and profound, creating a dynamic that challenged Sophia's assumptions about family relationships among working-class people. Diego's current position as Director of Educational Outreach for a nonprofit organization working with immigrant communities reflected both his professional competence and his commitment to service. His salary was modest by Sophia's standards, but his pride in the work was evident as he described programs that helped children like he had once been achieve academic success despite economic and linguistic barriers. Over the following months, Diego's presence in Sophia's penthouse became more frequent and more significant. Initially, he accompanied Elena for special occasions, holiday preparations, event planning, or times when his mother needed assistance with particularly demanding tasks. But gradually, his visits became independent of Elena's work schedule. As Sophia found herself genuinely interested in his perspectives on social issues, education reform, and community development, Diego's reaction to Sophia's wealth was refreshingly uncomplicated. He neither seemed intimidated by her obvious privilege nor particularly impressed by the luxury surrounding them. He treated her expensive artwork, designer furniture, and panoramic views as interesting aspects of her environment rather than symbols of power or status. His comfort in her space seemed to come from his relationship with Elena rather than any personal ambition to access Sophia's world. Their relationship developed with surprising naturalness despite the obvious disparities in their backgrounds. Diego's intelligence and education made him an engaging conversational partner, while his genuine interest in social justice issues aligned with Sophia's own charitable commitments. More importantly, his complete lack of agenda in their interactions allowed Sophia to relax in ways she rarely experienced with people outside her immediate family. Sophia found herself looking forward to Diego's visits with an anticipation that had nothing to do with charity or social obligation. His observations about her art collection revealed aesthetic sensitivity that rivaled her most sophisticated friends. His questions about her business ventures demonstrated analytical thinking that impressed her despite his lack of formal training in finance or corporate strategy. But what attracted Sophia most profoundly was Diego's authenticity. In her world of calculated social interactions and strategic relationships, Diego's honest reactions and genuine emotions felt revolutionary. He laughed when something amused him rather than when laughter might advance his interests. He expressed disagreement when he held different opinions rather than reflexively agreeing with her perspectives. His emotional transparency was both refreshing and slightly dangerous for someone accustomed to controlling every social dynamic. The moment their relationship shifted from friendship to romance occurred during a late evening conversation about Elena's upcoming 60th birthday. Diego had stayed after his mother's departure to help Sophia plan a surprise celebration, and their discussion had evolved into a broader conversation about family, loyalty, and the meaning of success. Diego spoke about his mother's sacrifices with a depth of emotion that moved Sophia in unexpected ways. Elena had worked multiple jobs to support his education, had learned English to help him with homework, and had maintained her dignity while cleaning the homes of people who barely acknowledged her existence. His gratitude was profound and genuine, creating a portrait of family devotion that contrasted sharply with Sophia's own complicated relationships with relatives who viewed her primarily as a source of financial opportunity. When Diego mentioned that he had never been able to provide his mother with the security and comfort she deserved, Sophia felt an impulse to offer assistance that surprised her with its intensity. But Diego's gentle refusal of her suggestion revealed pride and independence that made him even more attractive. He wanted to earn the ability to care for Elena rather than accept charity, even from someone whose resources could solve all their financial concerns without effort. The kiss that followed their conversation was as spontaneous as it was inevitable. Sophia had been attracted to Diego's integrity for months, while Diego had developed feelings for Sophia that transcended the obvious barriers between them. Their physical connection felt natural and profound, unmarked by the power dynamics that had characterized Sophia's previous relationships. But their romance also created complications that neither had fully anticipated. Elena's reaction to their relationship was complex, combining genuine affection for Sophia with maternal concern about the challenges her son would face in navigating such different social and economic circumstances. Sophia's social circle responded with barely concealed shock and speculation about her motives for pursuing someone so obviously beneath her usual standards. The most significant challenge was Diego's obvious discomfort with accepting the lifestyle that relationship with Sophia would inevitably entail. He insisted on paying for their dates despite the obvious disparity in their resources, refused gifts that would improve his modest living conditions, and maintained his nonprofit salary despite Sophia's suggestions about more lucrative opportunities. In her business network, Diego's apartment in Washington Heights reflected his values and circumstances: small, clean, filled with books and photographs that documented his work with children and his family's history. When Sophia visited, she was struck by how completely his environment reflected his personality: unmarked by the calculating acquisition that characterized most wealthy people's homes. Their engagement occurred during a quiet evening in Diego's apartment, where they had been discussing their future with the seriousness that their relationship deserved. Diego's proposal was humble and heartfelt, acknowledging the challenges they would face while expressing his commitment to building a life together despite their different backgrounds. The ring Diego presented was modest but carefully chosen, purchased with savings that represented months of careful budgeting. Sophia's acceptance was immediate and genuine, motivated by emotions that had nothing to do with her usual calculations about social advantage or business opportunity. Planning their wedding revealed the full extent of the cultural and economic chasms they would need to bridge. Sophia's vision involved venues, vendors, and guest lists that reflected her social position, while Diego preferred celebrations that honored their families and communities rather than displaying wealth. Their compromise resulted in a ceremony that satisfied neither vision completely, but represented their commitment to finding middle ground. The wedding itself was a study in contrast that pleased no one entirely. Sophia's friends and business associates attended out of obligation and curiosity, while Diego's community supporters felt overwhelmed by the luxury surrounding them. Elena moved between both worlds with quiet dignity, proud of her son, but conscious of the social dynamics that would forever mark their family's relationship with Sophia's privileged circle. But the ceremony also produced moments of genuine emotion that transcended the social awkwardness. When Diego spoke his vows, his words carried conviction that impressed even Sophia's most cynical friends. When Sophia promised to honor Diego's values and support his work, her sincerity was obvious to everyone present. Their honeymoon was spent not at an exotic resort, but visiting Diego's extended family in New Mexico, where Sophia experienced American poverty in ways that statistics and charity work had never revealed. The resilience and dignity of Diego's relatives challenged her assumptions about class and success while deepening her respect for the man she had married. Returning to New York, as newlyweds, Sophia and Diego established routines that accommodated both their needs and their obvious differences. Diego continued his nonprofit work while gradually becoming more comfortable with aspects of Sophia's lifestyle that didn't compromise his values. Sophia began involving herself more directly in education and social justice causes, finding purpose that went beyond charitable tax deductions. But 6 months into their marriage, a routine review of their combined financial accounts would reveal information that would shatter every assumption Sophia had made about her husband's background and force her to question everything she believed about their relationship. The discovery began with something as mundane as consolidating their bank accounts for tax purposes. Sophia's accountant, Margaret Chun, had requested documentation of all assets and liabilities to optimize their joint financial planning. It was a routine process that Sophia had completed countless times for various business ventures, but this time it would reveal secrets that would fundamentally alter her understanding of her marriage. Diego had provided the necessary paperwork, with his characteristic attention to detail, submitting forms and statements that documented his modest nonprofit salary, his student loan obligations, and his small savings account. But Margaret's thoroughness uncovered financial threads that led to discoveries Diego had apparently never intended to reveal. The first anomaly was a trust account listed under Diego's social security number that showed regular quarterly distributions of substantial amounts, payments that dwarfed his nonprofit salary and suggested investment income from significant assets. When Margaret requested clarification, Diego's explanation was vague and unconvincing, mentioning distant relatives and family investments that didn't align with the working-class background he had always described. Sophia's initial reaction was confusion rather than suspicion. Diego's financial circumstances had never been a factor in their relationship. She had married him despite his limited resources, not because of them. The possibility that he possessed hidden wealth seemed as unlikely as it was irrelevant to her feelings for him. But Margaret's investigation revealed increasingly complex financial structures that suggested sophisticated asset management and substantial underlying wealth. Shell companies, offshore accounts, and investment portfolios appeared under Diego's name, creating a paper trail that contradicted everything Sofia believed about her husband's economic circumstances. The breakthrough came when Margaret discovered that Diego Rodriguez was listed as the primary beneficiary of a massive trust fund established by the Rodriguez Foundation, a philanthropic organization focused on education and immigrant rights. Further research revealed that the Rodriguez Foundation had been created with an initial endowment of $200 million, making it one of the largest privately funded educational foundations in the United States. Sofia's world tilted as the implications became clear. Diego wasn't the humble son of her maid who had achieved success through scholarships and hard work. He was the heir to a fortune that rivaled her own, someone whose modest lifestyle and nonprofit career represented choices rather than limitations. The Rodriguez Foundation had been established by Diego's grandfather, Miguel Rodriguez, who had immigrated to the United States in the 1940s and built a construction empire that specialized in infrastructure projects throughout the Southwest. Miguel's business acumen and strategic partnerships had generated wealth that his family had kept deliberately private, using foundations and trusts to manage their resources while maintaining public anonymity. Diego's father, Carlos Rodriguez, had continued expanding the family business while establishing additional philanthropic initiatives focused on education and community development. The Rodriguez family's commitment to privacy had kept their wealth out of public knowledge, allowing them to support causes they believed in without the social obligations and public scrutiny that typically accompanied such substantial resources. Elena Rodriguez wasn't simply Sofia's longtime maid. She was the widow of one of the wealthiest men in American Latino business, someone whose work in Sofia's home represented personal choice rather than economic necessity. Her employment had provided structure and purpose during her grief, while also allowing her to maintain the privacy that her family valued above social recognition. The realization that Elena had been cleaning her home while possessing resources that could have purchased it outright was both humbling and disturbing for Sofia. Every interaction between them had been colored by assumptions about class and power that were completely false. Elena's dignity in the face of what Sofia now recognized as condescension was a testament to character that transcended economic circumstances. But the most devastating revelation concerned Diego's motivations for their relationship. His modest lifestyle, his refusal of gifts, his insistence on maintaining his nonprofit career, all of it took on different meanings when viewed through the lens of his hidden wealth. Had his pursuit of her been motivated by genuine attraction? Or was it part of some larger strategy that she couldn't comprehend? Sofia confronted Diego with the evidence on a Thursday evening in their apartment, spreading financial documents across their dining table like accusatory exhibits in a trial. Diego's reaction was neither surprise nor denial, but a quiet acceptance that suggested he had been expecting this moment since their marriage began. Diego's explanation revealed the complexity of growing up wealthy while wanting to live according to different values. The Rodriguez family fortune had been built on principles of hard work, community service, and social responsibility, but it had also created expectations and obligations that Diego found suffocating. His decision to work in education and live modestly wasn't poverty. It was rebellion against the assumption that wealth should define identity and purpose. His relationship with Sofia had begun as genuine attraction, complicated by the knowledge that revealing his true circumstances would change everything between them. Diego had watched his mother work for Sofia for years, observing how wealth affected relationships and personal interactions. He valued Sofia's character but knew that knowledge of his own resources would inevitably alter the dynamic between them. Diego's deception had been motivated by a desire to be loved for who he was rather than what he possessed. His experience growing up wealthy had taught him that money attracted people who were interested in advantage rather than authentic connection. By allowing Sofia to believe he was poor, Diego had created conditions where their relationship could develop based on genuine compatibility rather than strategic calculation. But his deception had also denied Sofia the opportunity to make informed choices about their relationship. She had married him believing she was making a sacrifice for love, accepting the social and financial complications that came with crossing class boundaries. The discovery that no such sacrifice had been necessary felt like betrayal, even though Diego's motivations had been protective rather than exploitative. The revelation also cast new light on Elena's role in their relationship. Her encouragement of their romance, her comfort with Sofia's wealth, her dignity in the face of obvious social disparities, all of it made sense when viewed from the perspective of someone whose own resources eliminated any possibility of intimidation or inferiority. Elena had been protecting both her son and Sofia, allowing their relationship to develop naturally, while ensuring that Diego's wealth didn't become a complicating factor until they had established genuine emotional connection. Her work in Sofia's home had never been about money. It had been about maintaining purpose and structure while observing the woman her son was falling in love with. The most profound impact of Diego's revelation was how it forced Sofia to examine her own assumptions about class, merit, and relationship dynamics. She had prided herself on loving Diego despite his poverty, but that pride now seemed condescending and shallow. Her sense of noble sacrifice in marrying beneath her station was revealed as arrogance based on ignorance. Diego's hidden wealth also raised questions about their future that neither had anticipated discussing. With combined resources approaching $800 million, they possessed the power to influence social causes on a massive scale. But their different approaches to money and publicity would require negotiation and compromise that went beyond typical marital challenges. More fundamentally, Sofia had to decide whether she could trust Diego after such a significant deception, even though his motivations had been protective rather than predatory. His willingness to let her believe he was poor in order to ensure their relationship was based on authentic connection demonstrated both admirable values and disturbing manipulative abilities. Diego's perspective was equally complex. He had achieved his goal of being loved for his character rather than his wealth, but at the cost of denying Sofia the full truth about who she was marrying. His deception had protected their relationship from the complications that money typically created, but it had also been fundamentally dishonest in ways that could destroy the trust they had built as they sat surrounded by financial documents that revealed the magnitude of Diego's hidden resources. Both Sofia and Diego faced questions about identity, authenticity, and the role of money in shaping human relationships. The woman who had married her maid's son had discovered that she had actually married someone whose wealth rivaled her own, forcing her to confront assumptions about class and power that had shaped her entire worldview. Diego's secret hadn't been motivated by greed or deception, but by desire to build a relationship based on genuine connection rather than strategic advantage. But his good intentions had created a foundation of dishonesty that challenged everything they had built together. The couple who had thought they were bridging vast economic differences discovered that they were actually equals in ways they had never imagined. But equality based on hidden truth was very different from equality based on honest revelation, and they would need to decide whether their marriage could survive the transition from deception to complete transparency. Their future would depend not on their ability to manage wealth, but on their capacity to rebuild trust and redefine their relationship based on complete honesty about who they were and what they wanted from each other. The discovery of Diego's fortune had eliminated their economic differences, but it had created new challenges about authenticity and trust that would test their commitment to each other in entirely unexpected ways.
Thank you for watching this story unfold with us here on M&A The Story Unfolds. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. We'd love to know where you're watching. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of the world you're joining us from. Your support means everything. See you in the next story.